Silent battlefields, where historic photos whisper the untold stories of war and human memory. In 1937, after the fall of Nanking, Japanese troops poured into the city with thousands of rising sun flags fluttering in the dust of war. They shouted victory slogans, marching proudly through the ruined, smoky streets. Behind the seemingly jubilant scene, horror was looming. A dark chapter in human history was about to be written in blood, tears, and desperate screams. In the midst of the fierce battlefield in 1942, the Soviet soldier in this famous photo jumped out of the bunker, raised his gun high, and shouted the attack command as his commander fell. At that moment, his eyes were blazing, symbolizing the courage and indomitable spirit of the Red Army in the life-and-death battle with Nazi Germany. The photo not only captured the heroic act, but also deeply engraved the spirit of sacrifice of a generation fighting for freedom and the fatherland. This photo captures the horrific moment during World War II, when a London bus was swallowed by a giant bomb crater after a devastating Nazi air raid in 1940. This was the aftermath of the Blitz, when Hitler ordered a massive bombing campaign on London, with the aim of breaking the spirit of the British people. The bustling streets were reduced to rubble, but the people remained resilient, turning the dark night of bombs into a symbol of indomitable courage. Amidst the rubble of East London in 1940, 3 children sat quietly beside the ruins of their once warm shelter. German bombs had ripped through the night sky, leaving behind an indelible mark of pain and loss. In their innocent eyes was confusion and fear, but also a strange glimmer of resilience. Although war had robbed childhood, the indomitable spirit of the British people still shone brightly amidst the brutal darkness of the Blitz. On February 23, 1945, 6 U.S. Marines planted the Star-Spangled Banner atop Mount Suribachi amid the flames of the Battle of Iwo Jima. The moment, captured by photographer Joe Rosenthal, became an immortal symbol of courage and sacrifice. The flag flying amid the ashes not only marked victory, but also sparked the faith of an entire nation at war, a symbol of freedom, pride, and indomitable spirit. In 1940, a Jamaican RAF gunner was photographed sitting in the cockpit of an RAF aircraft. The image not only shows the focus and determination on the soldier's face, but also reflects the important role that pilots and gunners from across the colonies played in the fight against fascism. In the cramped space of the cockpit, he had to watch the sky, operate the machine gun, and be ready to respond to any threat, a testament to the courage and quiet contribution of those on the front lines. In March 1945, in the midst of the fierce Battle of Iwo Jima, a Boeing B-29 heavy bomber was forced to make an emergency landing on a runway filled with smoke and flames. Immediately after touching down, the giant plane burst into flames, turning into a fireball in the middle of the battlefield. The image was both tragic and heroic, reflecting the extreme harshness of war and the sacrifices that air crews had to face in each mission. Omaha Beach, June 6, 1944. Hell broke loose in the misty dawn. Cold waves crashed onto the sand as American soldiers rushed from landing craft, enemy bullets tearing through the air like steel rain. Tanks crawled through smoke and fire. Artillery exploded. The American flag fluttered amid the thick smoke. Every step forward was a gamble of life and death, but they pressed on, not for glory, but for freedom for the world that was sinking into darkness. In the middle of Medova Street, Lviv, July 1941, a desperate woman runs in terror, her clothes torn, her screams echoing through the hate-filled crowd. Men and young men with batons chase her, their eyes clouded by rage and violence. The photo is not just a moment of war, it is a tragic indictment of human cruelty when hatred overcomes humanity. The photograph, taken in Hungary during World War II, captures the moment when hundreds of Jews were rounded up and prepared to be shipped to Auschwitz. Amid the bleak scene, the faces are filled with anxiety. Mothers clutching their children, old men leaning on canes. All exude fear and despair. The image not only reflects the tragedy of a people, but is also a heartbreaking reminder of the devastating consequences of discrimination and war. Zinaida Martinovna Portnovna, a young Belarusian, bravely fought against the Nazis as a partisan in World War II. She became the youngest female soldier to be posthumously awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union, the country's highest honor. Unfortunately, that glory only came after Zinaida was captured and executed in 1944. Born in Leningrad, she was only 15 when the war broke out. During a summer vacation in Belarus, near the Soviet-German border, Zinaida was suddenly caught in a vicious vortex when German tanks overran her summer camp, leaving her stranded behind enemy lines. From then on, Zinaida chose the path of uncompromising fighting. In January 1933, Adolf Hitler officially became Chancellor of Germany, ushering in the darkest period in European history. In his brown Nazi uniform, he raised his hand to the fanatical cheers of thousands of people. But behind the halo was a nightmare being prepared. Political opponents were imprisoned, the press was controlled, and the national treasury was poured into weapons research, building a giant war machine, which would push the world into the disaster called World War II. In July 1937, gunfire erupted at the Marco Polo Bridge, marking the start of the bloodiest Sino-Japanese War in 20th century Asia. Under the banner of the rising sun, the Imperial Army marched into Chinese territory, carrying with it expansionist ambitions and the terror of millions of civilians. Peaceful streets turned into battlefields. Houses burned down. Blood mixed with smoke. The war not only destroyed China, but also paved the way for the global storm known as World War II. This historic photograph captures a haunting moment during the war in China. Amidst the devastation, innocent civilians face severe punishment at the hands of the occupying forces. Behind the lens is the pain of a nation, a reminder of the terrible consequences of war and violence. The photo not only records the past, but also reminds humanity of the value of peace and humanity. In the mist-shrouded Sutjeska Valley, exhausted Yugoslav partisans bravely retreat through the treacherous terrain. They carry their wounded, their weapons, and their fragile hope amid the hell of war. The photo seems to freeze a life-and-death moment where courage and despair blend, a testament to the indomitable power of humanity in the face of brutality and destruction. Around 1940, in the gloomy forests of Yugoslavia, a Gestapo agent coldly observed a tragic scene. The resistance fighters were tied up, standing between life and death. The atmosphere was heavy. The wind whistled through the trees like a lament for innocent lives. The photo became a haunting reminder, reminding humanity never to forget the price of freedom and courage in wartime. The photograph captures a horrific moment in history. Under the shadow of the Nazi helmets and expressionless faces, a group of women are dragged into the middle of the street, bewildered, naked, and without any choice. The silent sound of helpless hands, the fateful gaze forward, all serve as a warning that humanity can lose its dignity and freedom in a single moment. In a rare photograph taken at Buchenwald concentration camp, Claire Booth Luce, a famous American politician and diplomat, is seen visiting the prison hospital. Here, she directly talked to Nazi prisoners suffering from tuberculosis, who were part of the cruel death machine. In the gloomy scene, the dialogue was not only humane, but also a testament to the confrontation with the terrible crimes of the fascist regime. On April 12, 1945, in the Merkers salt mine in Germany, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, and General Omar N. Bradley, commander of the 12th Army Group, carefully examined a suitcase filled with precious silver. This was part of the huge booty hidden by the Nazis. That moment clearly reflected the brutality of war and the secrets that the Allies gradually discovered. In early 1945, a U.S. Air Force P-51 Mustang fighter jet soared from the runway on Iwo Jima, on a mission to escort and protect long-term bombing missions into Japanese territory. With its superior speed and long range, the P-51 became a steel shield in the sky, effectively supporting B-29s in the final fierce phase of World War II, helping to shape the absolute superiority of the Allies. In 1937, in the suffocating atmosphere of Europe before the storm of war, Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini walked side by side, inspecting long lines of SS soldiers in cold black uniforms. Hundreds of shining bayonets reflected the gloomy light of a dark age. The two dictators walked with confidence and arrogance, believing that their power was invincible. This moment recorded the historical moment when the specter of World War was gradually rising. This moment was like a living symbol of the team spirit and bravery of World War II. The soldiers on the ground lined up neatly beside their bicycles, raising their hands in farewell as the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress roared into the sky. They knew that each flight carried with it hope and immeasurable danger. The sound of the engines and the cheers became a farewell song, marking a time when courage was the only thing stronger than fear. Around 1943, in the midst of the fierce European battlefield, General Kurt Student, the symbol of the German airborne forces, was talking to the officers of the Junkers Ju-88 unit. His stern eyes and decisive gestures showed the authority and strategic vision that made him famous as the father of the German paratroopers. This moment encapsulated the iron discipline and air power of Nazi Germany in World War II. In December 1944, the skies over Austria shook under the roar of American B-24 Liberators. Under their wings, the railway network, the transport lifeline of Nazi Germany, was engulfed in smoke. Bomb after bomb fell, cutting off supply lines and paralyzing the enemy's logistics system. From thousands of meters above, American pilots saw flames rising from train stations, factories, and warehouses, a symbol of the devastating turn of the war in the skies over Europe. This disturbing photograph captures the moment after World War II, when a French woman had her head shaved in public as punishment for allegedly collaborating or having relations with occupying German soldiers. Her face is blank, her eyes blank with shame and hatred, while those around her look on indifferently. The images reveal a dark chapter where honor and revenge collided with post-war rage. Around September 18, 1944, in the newly liberated Belgian town of Aalst, a soldier of the Irish Guard smiled as he accepted a cigar from a local resident. In the jubilant atmosphere after long days of occupation, the small gift became a symbol of gratitude and joy of reunion. This simple yet emotional image depicts the warm military-civilian relationship amid the flames of World War II. On January 29, 1945, in Binalonan, Pangasinan, Luzon, American soldiers, in conjunction with Filipino resistance forces, inspected the scene after a fierce battle. Before them were two Japanese Hago light tanks that had been shot down, lying motionless in the dust of the battlefield. Inside, the Japanese crew members had died, leaving a clear evidence of the Japanese Army's defeat in the campaign to liberate the Philippines. Amidst the bustle of a United Service Organization, USO, event circa 1943, a woman in a bikini gracefully walks among the ranks of smiling and amused American servicemen. Performances and entertainment like this were organized by the USO to ease the war fatigues, bringing joy and optimism to American soldiers serving in World War II. The introduction of the American gas mask in combat. To protect troops from chemical attacks, the United States issued gas masks widely. Training ensured that soldiers could quickly put on masks when attacked. This protective device saved many lives in the mustard gas environment. Masks became an essential part of combat gear. Their use marked a new era in chemical warfare defense. For much of the war, the Germans had absolute air dominance. The mighty and fearsome Luftwaffe, commanded by Hermann Göring, was the largest and most powerful air force in World War II. They had devastated London during the Battle of Britain. Here, however, the British got at least a small measure of revenge, bombing German-held Abbeville airfield in France. May 1945. Members of the Danish resistance movement escort two women arrested for their relations with the Nazis during the war. The brutal scene at Iwo Jima, March 1945. 4 U.S. Marines huddle down a charred hillside as a Japanese bunker explodes, billowing smoke engulfing the sky. The ground is bare. The trees are burned to the bone, depicting the naked brutality of war. The photo was praised by Life as one of the most horrifying and realistic images, capturing the moment when a small human being faced with the enormous destruction of the Iwo Jima battlefield. Amidst the chaos of the Warsaw Ghetto in 1943, this heartbreaking photograph captures the moment when Jews were dragged out of hiding by the Nazis. Among them, a small boy with his hands raised in surrender, his eyes filled with terror, has become a tragic symbol of the Holocaust. Behind his face, there are the cries of millions of lost souls. The photograph not only tells the story of atrocities, but also depicts the indelible pain of humanity. The chilling photograph was taken at the Ebensee concentration camp, Austria, in July 1945, where the prisoners, emaciated and with empty eyes, stood huddled in silence after the hell on earth. They were victims of barbaric, scientific experiments conducted by the Nazis, starved and tortured to exhaustion. Their emaciated bodies were living evidence of the unimaginable brutality of war. Each face in the photo was a silent accusation of crimes against humanity. A victim of the 1945 atomic bomb explosion in Japan has horrific burns in the shape of a nuclear burn pattern. The wounds trace the exact shadow of the kimono the victim was wearing at the moment of terror. The intense heat and radiation from the explosion imprinted the fabric's pattern onto his body, turning his skin into a painful replica of his clothes. The scene is both horrifying and haunting, revealing the inhumanity of nuclear weapons. At Belsen concentration camp in 1945, after its liberation by the Allies, German civilians were forced to witness and participate in the cleanup of the horrific atrocities. Under gunfire and bayonet watch, they collected the emaciated bodies of prisoners, leaving them scattered across the campgrounds. Their faces, frightened and terrified, reflected the stark reality they had previously tried to ignore. The scene became a painful reminder of silence in the face of atrocities. In the midst of the fierce battle at the Battle of Peleliu, which lasted from September to November 1944, the U.S. Marines took a rare break after clearing the battlefield. They sat on the hot ground, their backs covered in sweat, quietly lighting cigarettes to dispel their fatigue. The image not only depicts resilience but also shows the human moment in the midst of the brutal storm of war. In a rare photograph taken at Buchenwald concentration camp, Claire Booth Luce, a famous American politician and diplomat, is seen visiting the prison hospital. Here, she directly talked to Nazi prisoners suffering from tuberculosis, who were part of the cruel death machine. In the gloomy scene, the dialogue was not only humane, but also a testament to the confrontation with the terrible crimes of the fascist regime. On April 12, 1945, in the Merkers salt mine in Germany, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, and General Omar N. Bradley, commander of the 12th Army Group, carefully examined a suitcase filled with precious silver. This was part of the huge booty hidden by the Nazis. That moment clearly reflected the brutality of war and the secrets that the Allies gradually discovered. As Germany conquered new territory in Eastern Europe, it created special paramilitary units called Einsatzgruppen, which murdered Jews and dissidents, often in mass shootings. Jews and other victims in Germany and the countries under its control were rounded up and sent to concentration camps, labor camps, and death camps. The massacre was carried out without exception for children or infants. At Auschwitz, the Germans also conducted medical experiments on living human beings, such as placing prisoners in pressure chambers, testing them on various drugs, freezing them to death, and performing other extreme torture on prisoners. The genocide of 6 million German Jews is known as the Holocaust, or Shoah. Pictured are Hungarian Jews being held in a gas chamber at the Auschwitz concentration camp in 1944. On January 9, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, causing Britain and France to declare war on Germany. Most opinions believe that this was the moment World War II officially began. On September 17th, the Soviet Union entered Poland. By June 10th, Poland was completely occupied by Germany, the Soviet Union, and their allies. In 1940, Germany took control of Denmark and attacked France, forcing it to surrender and allowing Germany to seize much of its territory. Pictured here is a German Bf-110 fighter jet flying over the border of Poland during World War II. In May 1941, on the rocky roads of Crete, German paratroopers marched silently through a scene of devastation. The bodies of British soldiers lay scattered on both sides, a testament to the fierce battle that had just taken place. The harsh sunlight shone on the tired but determined figures, a tragic moment that revealed the cruelty of war and the resilience of those who never gave up. In the mist-shrouded Sutjeska Valley, exhausted Yugoslav partisans bravely retreat through the treacherous terrain. They carry their wounded, their weapons, and their fragile hope amid the hell of war. The photo seems to freeze a life-and-death moment where courage and despair blend, a testament to the indomitable power of humanity in the face of brutality and destruction. In the skies above Athens in 1941, German Luftwaffe Dornier Do-17Zs soar over the immortal symbol of Greece, the Acropolis. In that moment, both majestic and somber, history and war collide. Ancient beauty meets the storm of modern steel. This photograph captures more than just a flight, but a breathtaking moment when human civilization stands before the darkness of war. In the early 1940s at Fort Bragg, amid the build-up to war, young soldiers found joy in everyday moments. They laughed, shared stories, and temporarily forgot the darkness that was spreading across the world. Warm lights and laughter echoed in the small room, all as a reminder that, even in the darkest of times, people still maintained hope and love for life. Around 1940, In the gloomy forests of Yugoslavia, a Gestapo agent coldly observed a tragic scene. The resistance fighters were tied up, standing between life and death. The atmosphere was heavy. The wind whistled through the trees like a lament for innocent lives. The photo became a haunting reminder, reminding humanity never to forget the price of freedom and courage in wartime. On August 6, 1945, Hiroshima was engulfed in a blinding flash of lightning, the opening moment of hell on Earth. The first atomic bomb in human history exploded, flattening the entire city in an instant. More than 140,000 lives were lost. Houses and streets were reduced to ashes. In that desolate scene, a man stood silently among the rubble, looking back at his former homeland. 3 days later, Nagasaki suffered the same fate, and the World War entered its bloody end. In 1956, after more than a decade of captivity in the Soviet Union, the German soldier returned home, haggard, with the years of war etched on his face. Before his eyes was his 12-year-old daughter, the child he had left behind when she was just 1 year old. The moment when father and son embraced each other in the crowd, tears mixed with choked breaths, was a symbol of pain, loss, and the desire for reunion after the war. Helmut Pirath's lens captured that humane moment. The photograph captures a horrific moment in history. Under the shadow of the Nazi helmets and expressionless faces, a group of women are dragged into the middle of the street, bewildered, naked, and without any choice. The silent sound of helpless hands, the fateful gaze forward, all serve as a warning that humanity can lose its dignity and freedom in a single moment. This historic photograph captures a haunting moment during the war in China. Amidst the devastation, innocent civilians face severe punishment at the hands of the occupying forces. Behind the lens is the pain of a nation, a reminder of the terrible consequences of war and violence. The photo not only records the past, but also reminds humanity of the value of peace and humanity. U.S. Marines carry a near-dead baby, pulled from under a rock in a cave on Saipan in the summer of 1944. The baby was the only survivor among hundreds of corpses in the cave. Saipan, part of the Mariana Islands, had been a Japanese colony since World War I. By the end of 1943, it was home to more than 29,000 Japanese. In June-July 1944, the U.S. landed on Saipan, defeated the Japanese army, and controlled the island until now. 3 young women, Janice Cooper, Marilyn Connor, and Gloria Ellickson, attracted all eyes while sunbathing at Steeplechase Park on Coney Island, New York, in the 1940s. What was special was that they wore unique swimsuits made from World War II Air Force escape maps, a meaningful gift from their pilot boyfriends. The image was both sexy, daring, and full of wartime imprints of a turbulent period. Amidst the sound of drills and metal collisions, these women were not only assembling planes, they were building hope for the world. When men went to war, they became silent warriors in factories. Their soft hands now held tools tightly, their steadfast eyes turned to the bomb-filled sky. War had robbed them of their youth, but it had also turned them into indomitable symbols of strength and courage. Nurses, air raid prevention workers, and rescue workers tend to injured hospital patients waiting on stretchers to be taken to nearby hospitals after an air raid by a Nazi German Vergeltungswaffe Fiesler Fi-103 V1 Doodlebug bomber that hit Lewisham Hospital on the 26th of July, 1944, in London, England. In March 1945, in the midst of the fierce Battle of Iwo Jima, a Boeing B-29 heavy bomber was forced to make an emergency landing on a runway filled with smoke and flames. Immediately after touching down, the giant plane burst into flames, turning into a fireball in the middle of the battlefield. The image was both tragic and heroic, reflecting the extreme harshness of war and the sacrifices that air crews had to face in each mission. In May 1945, during the brutal Battle of Okinawa, U.S. Marines advanced through a devastated village, reduced to rubble and devastation by bombs and shells. Amid the devastation, the lifeless body of a Japanese soldier lay on the ground, a tragic symbol of sacrifice and despair. The image reflected not only the brutality of the battle, but also the brutal price borne by both sides in World War II. World War II. Men, women, and children rummage through the rubble of German bombing raids in London. July 28, 1941. German air raids killed more than 40,000 British civilians during World War II, with Londoners accounting for nearly half the total. German attacks on British cities, using conventional aircraft as well as V-1 and V-2 rockets, continued until March 1945. By then, the war's outcome was long decided, and Allied troops were massing on Berlin. In 1943, the Allies began a bombing campaign against rail and oil targets in Bucharest, part of a broader bombing policy aimed at crippling Germany's transportation system. Bucharest was considered the #1 oil target in Europe. Picture taken on August 1, 1943. When the war broke out, the I-16 was the Soviet Union's main fighter. It was the first high-speed monoplane with retractable landing gear. Firefighters use a water hose to extinguish flames and damage on the flight deck of HMS Formidable, an illustrious-class aircraft carrier of the Royal Navy, following a kamikaze air attack by an Imperial Japanese Navy Mitsubishi A6M0 during the Battle of Okinawa on the 4th of May, 1945, off the Sakishima Islands, Okinawa, Japan. In April 1942, after the daring Doolittle raid, Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle appeared with his crew alongside Chinese officials in a significant historical moment. The photo taken in China shows Zhao Fuqi, party secretary of the West Zhejiang provincial government, standing on the right. This is a testament to the close cooperation between the Allies and the Chinese resistance forces in the war against Japan. Although the war is long gone, its echoes still reverberate in every photo, every story, every scar of humanity. Each like, each subscription of yours is not only a show of support, but also a reminder that we will preserve that memory, so that the painful past will never be repeated.